Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask a Treasury Recruiter. I am Joe Grabowski with Treasury Talent, joined as always by Scotty John with Treasury Talent. This is an Ask Me Anything format that relates to your careers, your resumes, your job search, career progression, personal development, whatever it may be. This is your time to get the opinions and suggestions from two experienced recruiters. We have over, we'll call it 30 years of experience within the industry. We do cover Treasury currently. We are open to taking questions outside of Treasury as well. Scotty is currently on mute because he is monitoring the conversation for your questions. So if you do have any, please, this is your time to ask them. We do have a few questions that were texted in ahead of time, but this is your time. If you are tuning in right now, to just feel free to ask your questions. We'll make sure that we prioritize those and we'll get to the texted in questions later on. This will last for about 30 minutes or so. So with that, we will wait for Scotty to get set up there, and then we'll get started with the question piece.
All set.
Awesome. How are you today?
Oh, I can't complain for a Monday.
Yeah, for a Monday, it could be worse, right? So, number one, do we have any questions right off the bat, or should we just jump into this?
I think we should jump into it. I didn't see any questions, so they'll hopefully be trickling in here.
All right, perfect. Well, Scotty, I'll pitch this softball to you. How do I get my resume to stand out?
Yeah, softball indeed. So, I think this is one of those things where we get this question all the time. Got it just this last week. And the answer to the question is relatively unsatisfying. It's certainly not as brief as the question itself. But the reality is your resume will stand out only based on a given job. So we've said it before, but just to kind of address this particular question, whatever the job description says, you really want to mirror that language, and not just the what they're looking for in terms of accomplishments and experience, but frankly, there will be a buried in the subconscious of the individual that's reading it on the other end. It will stand out if it actually mirrors the company's language. And if you can incorporate their core values or mission and vision into your resume as well, I think there's no better way to get it to stand out. Do you have anything to add to that, Joe?
No. My suggestions, I think, would just be, if you're going to have your resume posted anywhere publicly, that would be your more general overview of experience. Please, I know there are conflicting viewpoints on this, but stay away from the executive resume or more of the summary resume type stuff. Leaves too much to the imagination. Stick with the standard resume format. I know that there are career coaches and everything else that will say, oh no, executive summaries and fewer than 2 pages. Make sure that you're communicating the experience that you have as well as the relevant experience for the job that you're looking for. So if you're heavy in capital markets, make sure that capital markets is experience, and you want to do capital markets next, make sure that experience is all over your resume. Same thing with FX, operations, whatever it may be. You want to almost design your general resume for the job that you want, not the job that you have. I'm not saying embellish your experience, but make sure that it's clear to anyone who's reading it, and have someone outside of the industry, whether it's a spouse, a friend, or something else, take a look to see if it makes sense, because chances are the person who's reviewing your resume is not within the Treasury industry and may not understand it. So try to keep it as simple and general as you can while actually getting your experience across. When it comes to applying to specific jobs, or basically, if you're working with a recruiter, they tell you to put a resume together, or if you see a job that you're interested in applying to, that's where you really hone in on the specific experience. You don't have to put a gazillion bullet points under this. This is a much more honed in resume, right? So after you've identified the opportunity, or you're getting closer to, you're whittling that down a little bit more so that the resume is only showing the experience that's out there. The whole idea is you're trying to get yourself advanced in the process, and the more relevant experience that you can make clear as day to the person who's reading it, the better chance you have doing that. Now, that being said, hiring is one of those situations where you can do everything right and still not get chosen. But all you're trying to do at this point is put yourself in the best possible scenario to be able to move your resume forward, or to the question, get your resume to stand out from the crowd. I would make the exact same recommendation for your LinkedIn profile from a general standpoint. because chances are any kind of internal recruiter is going to find you not necessarily in a resume database like a Career Builder or Monster or anything like that. It would be through your LinkedIn profile. So you would want to make sure that your profile is built out that way as well.
Perfect.
There's the end of my ramble. Do we have anything from the audience yet?
No, not yet.
All right, cool. All right, so follow-up question to that. Why am I not getting a call back for jobs when I'm a fit on paper?
Yeah, so this is, this is a frustrating thing. And the reality is sometimes there's not a good answer. But that being said, you guys are tuned in here to get recruiter's perspective, and given you and I have both spent time on the corporate side, Joe, we can speak to you. The fact is, first of all, your resume, when you apply to a job, it almost never goes directly to the hiring managers. Some hiring managers do stay really close to the process. They work with their recruiters and kind of have working sessions where they'll actually go through resumes together. But that's the exception, not the rule. Most of the time, it is a recruiter who's looking at your resume. So, you look at a job description and you say to yourself, I'm a perfect fit for this job, right? The key is, does that come across on paper to somebody who doesn't know the space, especially Treasury? We talked about it ad nauseum here, that Treasury is, it's niche and it's specialized, and most recruiters don't fully understand it. We can just give a couple of examples here that, hiring managers will complain to us often about the number of FP&A and accounting resumes they get when they post for a Treasury job. So the reality is it's a recruiter who's got their eyes on it, and they may not, if you've got some language in there that isn't explicitly mirroring, back to the last thing we just talked about, mirroring the job description, then they're not going to necessarily realize that that's capital markets activity or risk management or operations, Treasury operations activity. Yep. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is, depending on the organization, and especially right now, given the amount of people who are actively on the market, they're getting inundated with hundreds of resumes. So the reality is they may not even actually ever look at your resume. I'd say that's probably even more likely. If you're a perfect fit on paper, you're just not getting, they're never getting to you. There's too many to get to. They go with the first, few hundred, they pull a short list from there. And then those people go through the process while everybody else who's applied just kind of sits in queue. So those would be my two responses to that. I'm sure, Joe, you probably have something to add, if not, some additional thoughts around that.
Yeah, it's again, to your point, there's no right answer for you there. Hiring is an inexact science. You can do everything right. You can have the perfect resume, you can have the perfect interview, still not get chosen because, I don't know, maybe you're wearing the wrong color tie, maybe you went to the wrong color school. It doesn't make it right, but these are different scenarios that we've encountered over the course of our careers too. They do exist as much as we try to fight them. And that's why you and I spend a lot of time coaching hiring managers and trying to correct bad hiring practices. With that being said, you can be the perfect fit, but it could be something completely out of your control. The advice that we give is just what you have that's within your own scope that you can control. And that's prepping for the interview. That's making sure that your LinkedIn profile and your resume are a dead match for that job. Make it so they have no reason to say no. And if it is, like, if they do wind up saying no, to your point, could be a timing thing. They're already too far in the process, whatever it may be. You'll just have to accept that as a job seeker. Again, it doesn't make it right, but it's the fact of the matter is only one person can be chosen for each job. So throw your hat in the ring, put the work in ahead of time to make sure that you do stand out from the other applicants, but understand that, even that's not going to net you a perfect result every time. So in addition to what you said, those are my thoughts around it. I don't know if there's anything else that I've said that is striking a chord with you or causing any additional conversation.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. Again, I guess to your point, the one thing I would say is just to reiterate the fact that you just never know. The reality is oftentimes when a job is posted, the hiring manager knows somebody that they've already been speaking with and they have a relationship with, and that's the person they want to hire. they still have to post a job from a legal standpoint. The job has to be posted. There are some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, a job needs to be posted, and people need to be given an equal opportunity to apply for that job. If the hiring manager's mind is made up about the individual that they want to bring over, no matter how great of a fit you are, you're just not. You're going to be at a disadvantage from the beginning, and that's why we preach on this program. The proactive networking that we've talked about in the past, because that is how you kind of rise to the top of the hidden job market, so to speak.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, Joe. We just got a question. It's a question that that we had texted in as well, or had gotten texted in as well. But I think let's just address this. So I'll pitch this one over to you. Sure. And the question is, what are your thoughts on seeing a position open, i.e. on LinkedIn, for months?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And this is honestly something that we coach hiring managers on all the time. And I have throughout the course of my career too, is I call them stinky fish. It's essentially your rotting fish that's been out there for, I'll call it longer than 3 months, because no job should be open for longer than 3 months. It leads to some sort of misalignment in either what's in the market, who's available, or something's misaligned with that job for it not being filled. It goes beyond just a slow hiring process, because even the slowest of hiring processes shouldn't take beyond 90 days. So with that being said, I would still, I mean, if you're interested in the job and you haven't applied previously, throw your hat in the ring. But again, understand that there's probably something that's misaligned with this. So go into it with fairly low expectations. It could be the perfect job for you. I'm never going to be the person to speak in absolutes. Chances are it's not. And there's some sort of, we'll say that there's hair on it in some way, shape, or form. Like if you drop something on the floor, it collects dust or whatever else is on there, and you got to wash that off. Can't do that with jobs. So, I would still throw my hat in the ring if it's something that I'm interested in. But chances are, like if it hasn't been filled in 90 days, there's something that's misaligned, and either just go into it with low expectations, I guess, is the only thing I can say with this.
Yeah. So the question was, what are our thoughts? And I'm sure off camera, we may have some additional thoughts, but like Joe said, there's misalignment. I mean, the reality is if a job has been posted for several months, and we've seen jobs in Treasury posted for as long as 24 months,
Yep.
The only thing I can take away from that personally is that they don't know what they want. They just don't, because in some cases, given we do operate in such a small niche, we've spoken to people who have interviewed that you or I, Joe, would have put forward. Like great candidates, people who should have been hired that were not hired. So all that says to me is they don't know what they want. And like Joe mentioned, it doesn't mean you shouldn't still pursue the conversation and the opportunity, but it's a data point that probably needs to be weighted somewhat heavily for you, because it does tell you that it's either one, a hiring manager doesn't know exactly what they want or need, or two, their expectations are not realistic. And then beyond the hiring manager, there could just be misalignment with other stakeholders in the organization. You never know. And so those are the types of opportunities or positions posted that you'll really want to bring a ton of questions to. And I think it's completely fair as a job seeker to tell the individuals that you've noticed the job's been open for months and you're just curious as to why that is. I mean, that's a completely fair question.
Yep, because you don't want to put yourself in the middle of a dumpster fire either. The one caveat that I will throw out, that I know we just talked a lot about, hey, like there's something wrong with this job. It is possible that you get all the way through an offer process, someone declines the offer, accepts a counter offer, so now all of a sudden that job is re-advertised. And I just thought of that when you were talking, sorry, but that's, again, everything within hiring is an inexact science. So it's all situational. You just got to gather as much information as you possibly can. If you're fortunate enough to get a conversation or a response, ask, say, hey, I've seen this job is open for 4 months. What's going on? Usually a recruiter is going to say, you'll get a pretty good feel for transparency. It's, hey, we had an offer decline or someone accepted a counter offer. So now we're back to square one. you're trying to generate that dialogue, but you also want to make sure that you're making the best decision for you. Your goal is not to be the one chosen. Your goal is to make the right choice for you and to move into the next job that's right for you.
Such great, we all kind of have an inherent desire, especially in the job seeking process, to be chosen. And oftentimes we don't step back to really determine whether or not it's a fit for us. Again, it's a cliche that you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you, but it is easier said than done. And it's, again, just a really great point, Joe, to mention that there's a bunch of different potential things that have could lead to a job being open this long. So again, I'll just reiterate, asking questions and trying to understand is the key there. So anyway, those are some of our thoughts on
Yep.
that.
Yep. Do we have anything else?
I don't know that we have anything else. I think we can, if you give me a minute to refresh here, you can go ahead with the next question we had texted in.
All right. Well, that actually ties into a couple of different questions that were texted in. So, why are so many jobs going unfilled right now, Scotty? Talk to me about that.
Well, I think, again, so the first thing to mention for anybody, if there are people on this feed that are watching that are not in Treasury or finance, we're speaking about positions within Treasury right now. I can't knowledgeably kind of speak to other industries at this point in time.
Yeah.
So I'd say there's a general reason on this, and then there's maybe the more specific reason. The general reason is, well, at least from what we've seen in our space, is just the fact that there's so much need out there. And again, there's just a lot of, what's really interesting about hiring is it comes down to psychology, like many other things. And when you have so many options, when you have so many choices, I think a lot of hiring managers are getting in their own way because they keep thinking, well, you know what, there's so many people applying. Eventually the person who checks every single box that I want is going to come around for me. And on the flip side, from a supply side, if you will, the candidates who maybe are the most attractive with the best backgrounds, et cetera, they have options, right? So now they're going through multiple processes and probably dragging processes out a little bit more. Again, we're speaking kind of more specifically to the Treasury space. Those are two of my immediate thoughts to that question. Joe, what do you have to add? I'm sure that there'll be some more that come on my end. But.
Yeah, when I boil it down, just from my experience in recruiting, the two reasons, and it's kind of across all industries, the two reasons why jobs remain open are because, number one, it's a skills misalignment. Usually, especially, you'll see this quite a bit, not necessarily in newly created positions, but if someone's trying to backfill for a team member that's left, usually that team member is coming in with a different skill set, especially in Treasury. These people are usually tenured by the time they leave, so they're leaving with a different skill set. So now all of a sudden, you hired for one skill set, now you're looking for a skill set that doesn't exist in the market, and you're just sitting there spinning your wheels waiting for that perfect person to show up, when in actuality, it could be two jobs that you're looking to fill, and maybe you're just trying to condense budget or headcount, whatever it may be. Maybe you don't have the approval for headcount, or it's a situation where the role isn't filled because it's not causing the hiring manager any pain, to be perfectly honest. Treasury professionals, I can speak to that specifically. I know that it operates differently from healthcare because you're literally talking life or death most times. And also from IT, where, infrastructure crashes and the site goes down, that's bad for business. So those are the two main things. It's either a misalignment with skills. Sometimes it's compensation to go along with the skills, whatever it may be. And then the other piece to that is just, it's not causing the hiring manager pain. I know personally with me, when I need to get something done, I'm going to drive people nuts and really drive my agenda and come up with solutions to get stuff moving in my way. Moving in my direction so that it's not causing me pain anymore. I can't say that every hiring manager has that same motivation. It's not a shot at hiring managers, just everyone's prioritizing a little bit differently. So those are the two main reasons that I see jobs staying open.
Yeah, to your point, again, just to speak to the Treasury space specifically, what we found, in our conversations with people is that there seems to be a pretty high pain tolerance. There's the threshold for pain from hiring managers in Treasury is high. A lot of, like you say, Joe, a lot of these positions are that the reason the business need is the treasurer or the director of Treasury or whomever it is that's hiring is doing this today, and they need somebody to come in and take it off their plate. Or they lose somebody and the team absorbs what that individual is doing. This leads to people working crazy hours. But again, that if that's not, if that, it seems like that's kind of that can be a norm in this space, working crazy hours and just working hard and doing things that, that maybe in other industries people wouldn't be willing to do. That does seem to be occurring in this space because, to your point, if it hurt enough to have that position open for that long, it wouldn't be open for that long.
Yeah, it all comes down to prioritization and need, and then your willingness to get creative if you need to essentially satisfy a need or take care of a pain. So you'll get a pretty good feel for the leader's style, honestly, by how long this position sits open too. It's more, I'm taking some liberties here, but if you have someone who's inflexible in what they're looking for, trying to bring someone in, and that's the reason why the job's staying open, then kind of gives some insight into leadership style too. And it's usually the people who have more difficult leadership styles that their jobs tend to go unfilled a little bit longer too. I know that's an overgeneralization. I need to be careful with it, but that's a trend that I've noticed from my seat in the world too.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Joe, I'm getting some great questions from the audience here, so I'm gonna pitch them over to you in order. So the first question here is, any tips for when you reach out to a connection via LinkedIn, but you do not get a response even though they've looked at your profile? So this individual has LinkedIn Premium account. They can see when someone's looked at their profile, and so what they've done is they know this person's received their message and then gone as far as to look at their profile, but they're not responding. What recommendations do you have around that?
I would send a tickler, just a quick follow-up message. Hey, Si, I looked at my profile. Would you be interested in connecting? Just doing something like that. I'll own up to this. Like, I look at people's profiles all the time. They send me a message, and it's usually me looking at their profile in response to the message. Then I get a phone call or pulled in a different direction in the middle of it. Completely forget about it. So doesn't mean that I don't like the person. Doesn't mean that I don't want to talk to them. Simply means that something else pulled my attention. I think that, between texting, phone calls, emails, LinkedIn, everything else, you have so many forms of communication that it certainly presents challenges in trying to connect with professionals these days. And that holds true for me too, I can tell you that. So I try to put myself in other people's shoes as well, saying, yeah, if I have the sea level breathing down my neck on top of everything else I have going on, yeah, it just wasn't in their priority, or their attention got pulled away elsewhere. I just need to send a quick follow-up. If you're the one who's reaching out and expressing the interest, you have to put more interest forth. Or more effort forth. That would be my recommendation is, hey, if you're the one asking for something, you're probably gonna have to reach a little bit more than the person that you're asking something from.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, to your point, you just outlined what likely is the case. The individual, everybody's getting requests, regularly from all different directions. I mean, perhaps needless to say, but we're now in the attention economy. So we all have things pulling us different directions. LinkedIn, of course, is one of those platforms, that just one of many that pull us in different directions. And I think what you shared there, Joe, around the fact that you really do have to, as the person reaching out, as the person who's initiating the contact, it's on you to follow up. And frankly, you've got to kind of think about your messaging, and is there anything at all in it for the individual? I mean, sometimes all that people care about is wanting to help someone else. Some people, though, that they need more than that. So what's in it for them? And just, you don't have to go as far as to become annoying, but politely persistent is what we call it in our space.
And just one more thing to add on to that, I thought of it while you were talking, was make it easy for the person that you're asking. Like, be direct with your question, or just very simply, like, don't say you just want to catch up or chat things over or something, because if they're busy like you're busy, think about it. If there's more of an intent, that person knows how to prepare for the conversation. That person knows whether or not they're the right source of information for you. You're going to have to do a little bit of work ahead of time just to make it very, very simple for the person who you want to help you too.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And, you know, another thing that's helpful, but perhaps counter to what the question is trying to accomplish. But on that note, giving somebody an easy out is also, you know, again, from a psychology standpoint, I think it helps just to basically tell them that, you know, they don't have to follow up with you if they're too busy or whatever it might be. And it's strange to think that that would actually increase the chances of them responding, but people like to not feel like a pressure on them to follow up. Interestingly, that tends to mean they follow up more. All right, a
Yep.
couple more questions here, Joe, and we're getting close to
Yep.
our half hour cutoff. This is, I think this, I mean, this is a yes no question that we can then elaborate on. But the question is, do you think hiring managers are more distracted being in Zoom interviews versus interviews that are in person?
They shouldn't be, but yes.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly right. To your point, that I think you summed it up perfectly, and I don't know that we need to spend much more time on it. They shouldn't be, but the reality is they're in front of their screen, they're getting their notifications on email. You know, if something comes up, again, the attention economy, right? That
Yep.
that they've been waiting on, and it's like dinging in the corner of their screen, likely they're gonna address that, and that's not at all what they should be doing, but it's probably happening.
So we'll flip it to advice for interviewers. If you do find yourself in an interview over Zoom, close your email, close any messenger, close anything. You're going to have to go offline. It's just one of those deals. The whole idea with this is interviews are supposed to be you have one person's sole attention, right? And think about it. Like if I'm sitting across the desk from you and you're picking up your phone every 5 minutes because you're getting emails and answering those, how are you, like, number one, interpersonally, not great communicator and not great communication skills. You can't hold a conversation. It doesn't work out very well. So we recommend close all your email, close all messengers. If it's not over the phone, put your phone on silent, put it somewhere else. Just you have to be available for that person. That's the whole idea. And you should expect that same sort of consideration and we'll say respect from the person who's on the other end, whether they're a hiring manager or not.
Agreed. Yeah, and I read something once that stuck with me that the definition of charisma is attention. So to give your attention to an individual, you know, and it's all about expectation setting. If you are waiting on that critical phone call or critical email, you just have to set the expectation up front.
Yep.
But to your point, Joe, I think if you've carved out time to either conduct an interview as the interviewer or to be interviewed as the interviewee, you've got to eliminate those distractions. And, you know, things can wait half an hour or an hour. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Yep.
All right, we've got a unique question on this platform.
Okay.
It's actually coming from a recruiter who's asking some advice.
Okay.
And so let me read the question. I think it's well written, and we can address it, and that'll probably wrap us up here today. So if anybody else has sent a question, and since I last refreshed, I apologize. We'll have to get to your questions next week, or actually it'll be the week after next, right, Joe?
Yeah. I may take some time off for my birthday next Monday.
Yeah, heck yeah, man, as you should. All right, so here we go. So how do you stand out as a recruiter to the candidates who are receiving multiple offers / messages from recruiters weekly? How do you stand out from the current crowds of recruiters and hiring managers to get the best talent?
I can give you an example as early as today. I was approached by a recruiter for a job that I was way, way, way overqualified for. So let me just throw this out there that the barrier to entry to stand out from other recruiters is not very high. All you have to do, look at the person's profile, take a look at, if you're reaching out to them over LinkedIn, look at the person's profile, see if they've posted anything or interacted with anything. It's all right there in their activity feed. You can see it for the past 90 days. If they haven't, no big deal. Do not use templates. Like, just don't. Stay away from automation, stay away from the mass communication. The whole idea is if you're reaching out to someone, it's because you think they are the right fit for the job that you have. So why, same advice we gave to resumes, or I'm sorry, job seekers, to recruiters, you have to put in the time and do the due diligence ahead of time too. Now you can have a template that you customize for each individual person, but your chances to get a response are going to be much higher if you're customizing based on their experience, what you think is in it for them, not just what's in it for you. Most recruiters take or make the mistake of, hey, I need to talk to you because I have this opening. It's no, I think your background aligns with this. Here's where I think it may add value to you. Would you be interested in having a conversation? Just that simple, and you'd be amazed with the results because most people, especially in our industry, are extremely transactional, and it's the cattle call approach, right? I emailed 500 people and I got 300 responses. It's like, okay, great. Well, how much of those are meaningful? It doesn't matter. And this is a way that I manage my teams, and just so you know. So this is something I'm very passionate about. If that's not coming through.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add on to that, I mean, you kind of touched on all the important points, Joe, in terms of what's in it for the individual, and the fact that you have to, you can't be lazy about it. You have to put in some time and effort if you want to get the top talent. The other thing I'll mention here is that, this is, and it's tough if you're a more general recruiter. Okay, so if you're if you're recruiting more generally, especially if you're corporate or internal, it's really hard because you're going to be recruiting for different things. So you kind of are focused on the job in front of you. But the reality is even if that's the case, you can't make it feel like that. Like Joe mentioned, when he says transactional, what he means there is recruiters that are just focused entirely on the job in front of them. They're focused on what's in it for them. At the end of the day, what this is about is building relationships. Recruiting is about building meaningful relationships. And so it's easier if you have a niche focus, because here's what happens. You send a note to somebody, they've gotten 100 of these notes already. They respond to you, let's say, because they're, polite and feel like, okay, I'll just at least tell the person I'm not interested in this particular job. The response then is to ask them, well, what would be your ideal hypothetical job in the future? You mind taking a few times or a few minutes to speak with me about that, right? And you want to build a relationship because you do want to focus on that ideal job for them in the future. That's the way the business here at Treasury Talent is built. We focus on getting to know the people we work with and understand what they're looking for so that when those jobs come up, we know who to call. And, again, we're in a situation from a business perspective, the way our business is built to be able to focus on that. But even if you're not, you have to act as if, quite frankly, because otherwise people are just going to see right through it. So hopefully that gives you a high level. I think Joe and I could both talk for hours about this because we're both very passionate about it, but that'd be those would be the high level tips in terms of, standing out with regard to your messaging. And like Joe mentioned, for better or worse, the bar has been set low. So it's really not that hard to exceed it.
Yeah. And just one thing to really drive home on that is if you don't know, then don't play the person who thinks that they know everything. Like if say, Scotty, if we're recruiting Java developers and we come across, I used to run across this in the IT space all the time where technology evolves constantly. It's usually bleeding edge, and most companies who are looking to hire are hiring stuff that, maybe it's been open or it's been out for a year. I say, don't be afraid to admit, hey, I don't know anything about this. I have this role. I'm curious to see if you'd be interested. Just be a human. Don't be a robot. Don't put on the slimy sales guy approach, or salesperson approach, I guess is what we'll say. And just say, hey, I don't know. I'd like to learn more. Would you be open to discussing this?
Indeed. Yeah. What I get, and Joe, I know you get it too all the time from people who feel like our approach is breath of fresh air, if I may pump our tires here a little bit live, is transparency. People just say, thank you so much for your transparency. Thanks for answering my questions, even if you didn't know the answer. And so leading with vulnerability will build trust. You don't have to expect someone to trust you initially, the way to build trust immediately is to just be vulnerable. So, like Joe mentioned, if you don't know something, don't make something up at all. Just tell them you don't know, or tell them your best guess, right? But hey, I'm gonna go and try and find that, or not try. I'm gonna go and get the answer for you. So anyway, I'd say, like Joe said, be a human. That really does seem to be the best possible advice we can give for people that are interested in this space.
For sure. Let's be generous. Well, if there's any other question from the audience, otherwise we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, there actually is. So I don't know
Okay.
if you knew that before.
No, I did not. I just figured, why not? We're having a good conversation, so let's let it roll.
Perfect. Okay, so we got a question. I haven't read it yet, so I'm just going to read it real time. If you apply for a position and find a connection on LinkedIn, such as the hiring manager or someone in leadership, would it be a good idea to email or LinkedIn message the person directly as a follow-up? This one was, quite frankly, no offense to the question asker, but a bit of a softball pitch over to you there, Joe.
Yeah, I would. Your idea is to, I mean, that's why you build a network, right? It's you want to be able to tap that person on the shoulder. And again, we'll throw out the caveat that if you're gonna leverage your network and ask favors now and again, you have to be ready when someone asks you a favor too. But yeah, if Scotty, if you were the hiring manager and I knew person Jane Doe who knows you, yeah, I'm gonna go to Jane. Hey, what do you know about Scotty? Would you be willing to introduce me for this role? I'm interested. Here's why. Like, but you have to do the homework up front and make the case and do all of the legwork around why you're interested, why it's applicable. Like, you have to do all of that to set that up to make it easier for that person to help you. That's all it comes down to. It can't be like a general, hey, how are you? What's going on? Can we talk about this role? It's no, I'm interested in this role. I've applied. I feel like I meet XYZ. I may fall short here, but here's how I'd attack that. There you go. Who would say no to that? And if they do, then hey, yeah, it took a little bit of legwork up front, but you become a better writer if nothing else.
Yeah, you're dodging a bullet, right? If you reach out, okay, so in this scenario, you've applied to the job already, right? So you're mentioning that to the individual you're connected with. You respect the process, you've applied, and you wanted to recognize that everyone's pulled in different directions. You've heard from a couple of recruiters on LinkedIn Live that that sometimes your application isn't even viewed. Don't say that, but the reality is that it may not be. So you just want to make them aware, and like Joe mentioned, you want to illustrate some value to that individual, especially if it's the hiring manager. So the reason they have a job is because they have a problem that needs to be solved. If you can speak to how you'd be able to solve that problem briefly, succinctly, this is, again, you're when you reach out to someone, it's as if you're going to be working for that person. So they are judging your communication skills right then and there. So take the time to craft a well thought out, well worded, but succinct message to the individual describing how you believe you could solve their problem. And, like Joe said, if they don't respond to that in the kind of way that's like nothing but excitement, then you probably don't want to work for that person. Right. So, yeah, I mean, in short, absolutely. I would argue that you should be creating a list of the top 25 companies you're interested in and proactively sending invitations to everybody in your space, as well as in HR and recruiting, so that when a job does get posted, you've already built the network. You proactively spent the time up front. And now, because you haven't asked for anything up to that point, now you can say, I've applied to this job, but here's why I think I'd be a great fit. Would love to chat with you. Would love to have the opportunity to further explain how I can solve your problem, essentially.
Yeah, and again, to your advice earlier, give the opportunity to let them get out of the situation, right? If nobody owes you an answer at that point, it's still a fairly cold outreach. I hate to be cold about it, but that's, if you're reaching out cold, the expectation's low, and all you're trying to do is sell your way into the door to generate further conversation.
Absolutely, that's a really good point.
Anything else?
Let's just see here. I don't think so. Nope. Yeah, I think we're all set, Joe. So We will not be back next week, correct?
We will not. We will be back on March 8th. I'm going to be taking some time off for my birthday next week. So join us then. We will be here. We'll actually be on Simon's profile on Wednesday. We're not doing a practitioner chat this week. We're going to discuss basically a quick recap of what's happened with jobs so far in the first quarter of 2021. And we will not have Ask a Treasurer this week either, simply for the fact that we had a scheduling conflict with our guest for this week. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to text them in if you're not comfortable asking them publicly. We appreciate the engagement and the questions today. And as always, have a good one. Take care.
Thanks, guys.